I sent divorce papers to my cheating wife at her lover's house. You won't believe her reaction. I can still imagine the exact moment the envelope was ripped open and her face, which for weeks had been concealed in a false sense of security, twitching as she discovered everything was exposed. The betrayal, the contempt, the humiliation. I trusted her. I gave her my life, my dreams, our nights, and future plans. All the half-conversations, all the divided smiles, all the vows of love. All of it thrown away like crumpled paper. The idea of a divorce always seemed absurd to me, something that happened to other people. But when I realized that the woman who had once promised fidelity was leading a double life, a cold, almost calculating anger took hold of me. At first, I didn't want to believe it. The prolonged absences, the phone calls made in undertones, the lame excuses about work meetings and imaginary friends. All were ignored by me with an almost blind faith. But one day, in what would be just one of many routine days, I followed her by pure instinct, a primitive intuition that hammered in my chest. She walked into a cafe I had never seen before, looked around suspiciously, and finally sat down with him, the kind of guy anyone would hate just by looking at him. She kissed him with an intimacy that I hadn't seen in our kisses for a long time. My throat went dry at that moment. My world, as I knew it, had ended. Suddenly, it was as if all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The laughs we once shared seemed like distant echoes, memories that now tasted bitter. I became a stranger in my own home, a prisoner of a false normality, while she lived a life so comfortable that she didn't even bother to disguise it. So, I started planning. I watched, I waited. I didn't want confrontations, I didn't want scenes. He needed to be colder than her, more calculating than that cowardly betrayal deserved. And then on a random Saturday, I followed her again. This time, I knew exactly where she would be. The lover's house, a modest apartment half hidden in the city center, where they indulged in that dirty passion. I was prepared. I prepared the letter, wrote each line with surgical precision, as if I were cutting all the ties that had once tied me to her. You are considered notified. The divorce was there, printed and sealed with the coldness of a verdict. The envelope arrived exactly at the moment they were together. I can imagine the moment of delivery, a knock on the door, the postman smiling innocently as he delivered what looked like regular mail. She distractedly opens the envelope, perhaps without even paying attention to the sender, and then the truth drops like a bomb. She reads my name, the word divorce highlighted, and her expression falls apart. Despair, helplessness. For the first time, she feels the force of the blow she had been plotting behind my back. I can see the whole scene playing out in my mind like a movie. And he, the lover, there next to her, as stunned as she is, realizing that he is now entangled in something much bigger than an occasional fling. I imagine the confrontation that ensued between them. How did he know? She must have whispered, trembling, her eyes wide. He was lost, not knowing what to say. It was the first time she felt the bitter taste of being exposed, of having her mask ripped off without warning. And me, I was at home, sitting on the couch, watching the clock, counting the minutes until the phone would ring, waiting for the first sign that chaos was brewing. When she called, it was already too late. His voice was unrecognizable, a mix of anger and panic. "Why did you do that?" she screamed, not understanding that there was no return, that everything I had done was a consequence of her own actions. It wasn't just the discovery of betrayal, it was the crumbling of a life built on dreams and lies. I repeated calmly because I'm tired of living in the dark. Because while you were drowning in lies, I was drowning in your falsehood. And now, my dear, you're going to feel firsthand what it's like to lose everything. And she would lose because she never imagined that I would have an ace up my sleeve. What she didn't know was that the house we lived in, the comfortable life we led, everything she took for granted, wasn't hers. The house was an inheritance, mine and mine alone. I never registered her name as co-owner, and now, watching everything fall apart around her, she would begin to realize that the crux of someone who had all the pieces in hand from the beginning was now cornered, caught in her own trap. And what would come next? Well, no one could have predicted that, because the truth is, when betrayal is discovered, it's not just love that ends. It's the very notion of who we are, and for her, discovering that everything around her was fragile, like glass about to break, will be just the beginning of the end. Welcome to the channel. Here, betrayal is not tolerated and will never be supported. The stories you will hear are fictional, but their moral is clear. Betrayal destroys lives, corrodes love, and leaves deep scars. Get ready, because the story that comes next is intense, full of twists and turns, and will show how a single decision can end everything. Now, sit back and enjoy the story you're about to hear. Something shocking. Alex had always been a focused man, owner of a small technology company. He had built his career with effort and passion, always believing that hard work would bring him and his wife Olivia the life they deserved. Married for 8 years, they lived in a spacious house in an elegant neighborhood, the result of a family heirloom that Alex maintained with a certain pride. As if that property was a symbol of his stability and success, their routine was like that of any upper-middle-class couple. Social engagements, dinners with friends, and occasional trips to escape the hustle and bustle of the city. But it was in the comfort of their home, with large glass windows overlooking a well-kept garden, that Alex and Olivia liked to spend their best moments. There was an almost ethereal quality to the way the morning light filtered through the curtains, illuminating the breakfast table where they often sat together to discuss the day ahead. Life seemed simple, functional, perfect, at least in Alex's eyes. Olivia, with her elegant poise, was always the type of person who enchanted everyone around her. She possessed an easy smile and an aura that seemed to light up any room she entered. Working as an architect at a renowned firm, her dynamic and vivacious personality suited her profession perfectly. Olivia loved attending social events, art galleries, cocktails with friends, and everything involving architecture and design. In everyone's eyes, she was the perfect wife. A companion at Alex's company parties, involved in decisions about the home and passionate about her work. It was easy for Alex to be proud of her, to see her as the life partner he always wanted, the kind of woman he dreamed of building a family with. Yet, little by little, conversations at the dinner table became shorter, and their eye contact lingered less, even if he sometimes felt a slight disconnect, as if Olivia's world was always one step ahead, always a little distant. Their marriage, like any other, had its ups and downs, moments of deep affection when Olivia supported Alex in his riskiest projects, and moments of heavy silence when discussions about finances or time dedicated to work were inevitable. But even in those moments, Alex always believed they had a connection strong enough to overcome any difficulty. Alex had always held a pragmatic view of love. For him, love meant caring, protecting, and above all, being loyal. He made a point of being present at important moments, being the support Olivia needed when her work became stressful, or when her professional plans didn't seem to go as expected. Perhaps that was why, in a way, he had become complacent in certain aspects of his life. He believed that maintaining a stable routine, being a solid presence, and offering emotional and financial security were what really mattered in a relationship. Until then, he believed Olivia shared the same vision. But Olivia was a woman of intense emotions, someone who craved adventure, novelty, and a certain type of passion that perhaps the routine of a stable marriage couldn't fully offer. As the years passed, she began to feel suffocated by the walls of that house, no matter how beautiful and elegant it was, and by a life that, although comfortable, seemed to lose its luster. She tried not to let this restlessness show. She remained active in social events, always smiling, but there was something growing in her chest, something she could hardly explain. From time to time, Alex noticed that Olivia seemed distracted, lost in thought. But he always credited it to her job, which had spikes in stress, tight deadlines, and difficult clients. When he questioned her, she always made quick excuses, saying that everything was fine, that it was just accumulated tiredness or the weight of work responsibilities. Alex, who had never had any reason to distrust her, accepted these answers as true. Weekends used to be the time when the couple reconnected. Alex made sure to prepare breakfast, taking trays full of fresh fruit and juice to bed, where they spent time together, talking about the week. Olivia always seemed grateful, although her expression was different from the former lightness of years ago. She was smiling, yes, but her eyes were more introspective, as if there was an untold story behind that look. Despite this, friends saw them as an admirable couple. You are an example of love, many would say, but only Olivia knew about the doubts that pulsed in her chest, the uncertainties that haunted her night after night as she questioned whether the life she was leading was really the life she wanted. A part of her wanted to completely surrender to that comfortable and safer routine, while another part, which she could barely admit even to herself, longed for something more, something undefined. During the week, Alex spent hours at his company, dedicated to solving problems and improving his business. Occasionally, he would call Olivia to check on her day or to arrange dinner at a sophisticated restaurant, and most of the time, she seemed content with these calls, as if they were a reminder that he was there even when he was physically absent. But it was on Friday nights, when Alex arrived later due to work commitments, that Olivia showed different behaviors. She would say she was tired, go to bed early, or lock herself in the office, claiming to be reviewing projects for work. He always believed there was never a reason to be suspicious, as she was always a dedicated wife, someone who loved her profession and who always valued transparency. There was something, however, that no one noticed, a growing invisible distance between them, little things that previously went unnoticed but now, in retrospect, seemed like signs of something bigger. The way Olivia sometimes ignored Alex's calls, saying she was too busy, or the way she looked away when he surprised her with sudden affection. And Alex, too busy with his own routine, ignored these signs. He trusted his wife. He believed that all those changes were just part of the growth and maturation of a long relationship. Still, even without knowing why, he began to question himself, questioning whether the life he was leading was really the life they both wanted. And even if these doubts arose in moments of silence, he always pushed them away, thinking that they were just daydreams of a tired mind, worn down by the weight of daily responsibilities. Alex had no idea what was coming. He didn't know that while he believed he was building a solid foundation, there were invisible cracks forming, threatening to tear down everything he believed to be unshakable. And Olivia also didn't know how far she was willing to go to find what was missing in her life. What they both couldn't imagine was that at that moment, they were on a tightrope about to lose their balance, a fall that would forever change the life they knew. Autumn arrived with its icy air, bringing with it a feeling of change. Alex felt something was different. Alex tried to brush it aside, focusing on his work, the numbers filling his spreadsheets. But the nagging sense that something wasn't right refused to leave him alone. Olivia's distant gaze, her evasive smiles, as if her mind was always elsewhere, drifting to a place he couldn't reach. This began to weigh heavily on him. It was a persistent shadow, a burden he carried whether he wanted to or not. One evening, Alex came home earlier than usual. The office was closed due to unexpected maintenance, and he decided to surprise Olivia. He brought her flowers, her favorite perfume, and planned an impromptu dinner. These simple gestures, these little moments of affection, reaffirmed who they were to each other. Yet when he walked through the door, the smell of fresh food wasn't there, and the house felt empty, as though he had returned to a place that no longer belonged to him. He called out for Olivia, but only the echo of his own voice responded. Her phone was off. He tried to push away any negative thoughts, convincing himself she might be with friends or even at a last-minute work meeting. Deep down, though, he knew something was wrong. But how could he have predicted what was about to come? The days that followed were worse. Olivia seemed even more distant, her excuses increasingly lame. A last-minute meeting. I need to see a client at the office. She avoided Alex's gaze, and he was caught between distrust and the desire to believe everything was just nodding, pretending to believe all her explanations. Alex tried to convince himself that it was only his thoughts betraying him, that Olivia would never be capable of deceiving him like that. But at the same time, he felt something breaking slowly, painfully inside. One day, while at work, Alex received an anonymous message, a photo of Olivia in a restaurant, sitting next to a man he didn't recognize. She was smiling, a smile not meant for him. Alex stared at the image for what felt like minutes, unable to believe what he was seeing. There was something in the way she looked at the man, something he hadn't seen in years in his own marriage. Anger and jealousy took over him without thinking twice. He called Olivia, her usual soft voice answering, pretending everything was normal, but there was something different. The way she spoke quickly, as if rushing to hang up. Alex asked where she was, and Olivia, without hesitation, said she was in a meeting with a client, reviewing plans for an important project. Alex knew she was lying. The suffocating silence that followed made it impossible to continue pretending that something wasn't wrong. He replied with a simple, "Okay, we'll talk later," and hung up the phone, unable to hide his fury. It was too late to pretend that something wasn't amiss. Alex decided not to confront her directly. Not yet. He needed proof. He needed to make sure he wasn't imagining things. So he began observing Olivia closely, paying attention to every detail he had previously ignored. The perfume she only used on special occasions became a daily scent. The mysterious smiles she exchanged as she checked her cell phone frequently. Late-night visits to the office became more frequent. One night, when Olivia said she would need to work late, Alex decided to follow her. His anguish and curiosity mixed, forming a knot in his stomach. He saw her leave the house wearing a dress he hadn't seen in a while. A dress she used to wear in the early years of their marriage. Followed her car at a safe distance, his sweaty hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Each traffic light seemed to last forever. Each turn felt like entering a maze from which he wasn't sure he could escape. Olivia stopped in front of an apartment building, and Alex recognized the place at once. It was the neighborhood where she used to work before they got married. A place he always associated with their dating days when their passion was young and intense. Now, however, that scenario seemed like a betrayal scenario. She got out of the car, glanced around to make sure she wasn't being followed, and entered the building. Alex parked across the street, watching as she disappeared through the glass doors for a moment. He wanted to walk in behind her, confront her right there, but the fear of hearing the truth, of seeing with his own eyes what he already knew, paralyzed him. He waited, his heart pounding in his chest, his breathing heavy. Minutes later, a man came down to open the door for Olivia. A tall, well-dressed man who welcomed her with an intimate hug, as if embracing someone they loved. She smiled at him, a smile full of desire, and went up to the apartment, hand in hand with this stranger. Alex felt as if the ground had disappeared from beneath his feet. His stomach dropped, and he had to force himself not to get out of the car and confront them both at that moment. But he knew it wasn't the time, not yet. As he felt the bitter taste of betrayal take over his mouth, he understood that he now needed to act coolly and calmly. It wasn't just the marriage at stake. It was the life he knew, the stability, the future he had imagined. Back in the car, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He knew that betrayal would mark the end of something, but what Olivia didn't know was that that night would be just the beginning of a storm she couldn't control. Alex woke up that morning with the feeling that something was about to happen. He had spent the night awake, reliving the scene of Olivia entering her lover's apartment. Every detail, every movement, every smile of hers next to that man seemed recorded in his mind, like an open wound that wouldn't heal. He knew he couldn't continue living in that anguish, pretending that everything was fine. Olivia's betrayal had broken something inside him, something that could never be fixed. During breakfast, the silence between them was suffocating. Olivia was distracted, as always, looking at her cell phone. Alex watched her every move, every time she avoided his eyes. It was as if she was physically present but somewhere else mentally. Alex felt his chest tighten, the bitter taste of betrayal burning his throat. But he knew this wasn't the time to confront her. Not yet. He needed to have everything planned out. He needed something stronger, something that would put everything into perspective, that would make her realize the mistake she had made. In the days that followed, Alex acted calmly, as if he had been waiting for the right moment to act. He knew that Olivia had. Alex sat in the dimly lit bedroom, his heart heavy with anticipation. The silence around him was thick, almost suffocating, as he watched the minutes slip by. He could almost feel the weight of each tick of the clock, the seconds stretching into a tense, unbearable stretch of time. Olivia's movements, usually so lively and carefree, seemed subdued now, almost mechanical, as she prepared herself to leave. "I'm going out with a friend," she said, casually tossing her hair back with a smile that seemed more like a mask than genuine joy. Alex nodded, his jaw clenched tight, not trusting himself to speak. He let her go, watching her retreating figure with a cold, calculating gaze. She didn't know it yet, but the storm he had been brewing all weekend was about to break. Alex remained in the room, motionless, listening to the echo of her footsteps as they faded into the distance. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder of the truth he was about to reveal. He'd been ready for this moment for days, years even. The marriage he thought he had was nothing more than an illusion, a carefully crafted charade Olivia had built around herself. And today, the facade was crumbling. It was late afternoon when she finally returned home, her face pale, her eyes wide and rimmed with red. Olivia looked almost frantic, her composure frayed. "We need to talk," she said, her voice quaking. Alex rose from the sofa, a grim mixture of satisfaction and pain in his eye. "Yes, Olivia, we do," he replied, his tone flat, almost detached. She tried to speak, but her words caught in her throat. Olivia held the crumpled envelope tightly in her shaking hands. The divorce papers Alex had sent her earlier that day. Did you send this to him?" she stuttered, her voice breaking. Alex nodded, a sardonic grin flickering across his lips. "I thought it was only fitting that you received the news right where you always wanted to be, didn't you? With him." Olivia choked on her tears, her face contorted in pain. "Alex, I can explain," she began, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Explain what, Olivia?" Alex interrupted, raising a hand to silence her. "Explain that while I was here believing in us, you were out there with another man, that you casually threw away 8 years of our marriage like it was nothing." She opened her mouth to respond, but her words faltered. She knew there was no excuse that could repair the damage she had done. "You never wanted to hurt me, Olivia." Alex's voice dripped with contempt. "Are you seriously saying that now, after everything, you still try to play the victim?" He took a deep breath, his voice trembling with rage. "Do you think I didn't love you, that I didn't give you everything I had? Do you think I didn't do everything in my power to make you happy?" The words hung heavy in the air, the silence that followed almost deafening. Olivia shook her head, unable to find words that weren't drowned in tears. Alex's laughter was bitter, a sound more like pain than humor. "You know, Olivia, I didn't want us to end up like this. I really didn't. But after everything that's happened, I realized there's no way to continue." He paused, his gaze piercing. "And you know what's most ironic? This house, this place you thought was yours. It was never yours, Olivia. Never. I never put your name on the deed. This house was always mine, an inheritance that was never shared." The impact of those words was immediate and shattering. Olivia crumpled to the floor, her body racked with sobs. The reality of her actions finally sank in. What she had thought was just a temporary fling, a brief escape, had become the end of everything she knew. Not only was she losing her husband, but also her home, her sense of security, everything she had. "Please, Alex, don't leave me with nothing," she begged, her voice broken by her tears. But Alex remained resolute. "You made your choice, Olivia, and now you'll have to face the consequences." Her words spilled out frantically, as if she couldn't process the extent of her situation. I don't know what I wanted," Olivia stammered. Alex no longer wanted to hear it. "The point, Olivia, is that now it no longer matters what you wanted. Everything you destroyed, all the dreams, the trust, that's gone, and honestly, I don't care anymore." He took a deep breath, his voice thick with a mix of relief and emptiness. "Get your things and get out of here. You no longer have a place in this house, in my life." Olivia moved slowly, her movements almost mechanical as she packed her belongings into a suitcase. She looked at the house one last time, a place she had once believed was hers, but now felt colder and more distant than ever. As the door closed behind her, Alex remained silent, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The decision he had made would change his life forever, and somehow he was ready for whatever came next. The silence that filled the house was unlike any Alex had ever experienced. It was a deep, palpable emptiness, as if all the memories and sounds of their years together had been sucked out of there along with Olivia. He sat on the sofa in the living room, his eyes lost on the window, his mind a mess of thoughts and emotions. There was no satisfaction, no joy in what he had done. The weight of his choices hung heavy in the air. Alex sat there, a feeling of loss hanging in the air like a fog that would never lift, yet a cruel calm settled over him, as if he had finally come to terms with everything. The next few days were like trudging through a thick, suffocating mist. He dealt with all the legalities, ensuring nothing was left to chance. His days became mechanical, waking up, working, meeting with his lawyer, and then returning home, hoping that time would somehow bring him peace. But inevitably, every room in that house was a cruel reminder of the past. The quiet nights of conversations in dimly lit kitchens, the lazy Sunday mornings in bed, the shared laughter in the garden. And at the same time, he knew it had all been a lie. Every smile, every whispered, "I love you," as she betrayed him. The dilemma that now consumed Alex was how to move forward after everything had crumbled. How do you reconnect with your own identity when everything you knew had been torn apart piece by piece? Moments of anger overtook him at odd times, rage spilling out on small inanimate objects, glass shattered against the wall, a chair kicked across the room, as if breaking something could somehow ease the pain. But then, right after the rage subsided, all that remained was a painful emptiness. The emotional exhaustion left him yearning to disappear completely. Olivia, on the other hand, was lost from the moment he left their home. She wandered aimlessly, feeling like a stranger in her own city, a place that had always been her refuge. For days, she stayed at a friend's house until she mustered the courage to face her lover. She didn't know what to expect, but she hoped to find solace, perhaps some comfort. However, when she sought him out, he received her coldly, distantly. "I didn't know it would end like this, Olivia." "That's not what we agreed on," he said, his voice hard. It was as if the adventure they had shared had lost all its luster, all its excitement. Without the adrenaline rush of the forbidden, everything seemed dull, empty. He didn't want to be the reason a marriage fell apart. "I wasn't willing to bear the weight of that guilt," he said. Olivia tried to argue, but deep down she knew he was right. She herself didn't know what she truly wanted. She tried to cling to him like a lifeline, but the truth was, There was no future for them. The forbidden passion they shared was an illusion, a temporary escape from a life she thought to be monotonous. Now, however, all that remained was regret. The life she had, the comfort and stability that for so long suffocated her, now seemed so distant, so unattainable. She lost her husband, her home, and now her lover too. Olivia was truly alone. Meanwhile, Alex began trying to rebuild his old life. He found solace in close friends who only then learned the truth about what had happened. Everyone was shocked. No one ever imagined that Olivia could cheat. No one suspected anything. What bothered him the most, however, were the well-intentioned words of comfort. "You'll get through this, Alex. It's better this way. At least now you know who she really is." But none of that offered any real help. The words felt like bandages for a wound too deep to heal easily. Then, one night, something shifted. As he relived everything he had been through, the pain, the anger, the loss, Alex found himself at a crossroads. He realized he could spend the rest of his life trapped in that betrayal, obsessing over every detail, drowning in, or he could choose to free himself. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be instant, but he needed a way to move forward, to find the person he was before all the chaos. It was then that he made a decision. To look for Olivia one last time, not to confront her, not to seek forgiveness, but to end it once and for all. They met in a discreet cafe, far from the one they used to frequent together. When she saw him, he looked like a shadow of his former self. Deep, dark circles under his eyes, hair unkempt, restless hands clutching a cup of coffee. She didn't know what to expect from that meeting, and guilt consumed her like a fire. Alex sat down opposite her, took a deep breath, and began to speak. "Olivia, I'm not here to scream or apologize. I'm not here to resolve what's already been destroyed. I just wanted to say this is over. In truth, I will move on one way or another, and I hope you find a way too." She looked up at him, surprise in her eyes. For a moment, she thought he was going to say something else, that there was still room for reconciliation. But what he found was raw and definite truth. "I know you made a mistake, Olivia, but now you have to live with it." "And so do I," he said. "The only thing I wanted to say is, despite everything, I hope that one day you find peace, because I'm going to find mine." His words were not fueled by anger, but by determination. She tried to respond, but her voice broke. All he could do was nod, tears forming in his eyes, not knowing how to react. When Alex got up to leave, she felt the weight of everything she had lost. Lost love, lost home. And he realized that no matter how hard he tried, no matter how much he sought answers, nothing would change the fact that his mistake had led to the end of everything they had built. Alex left the cafe with a strange mix of relief and sadness, a blend of freedom and mourning for what he had lost. But he knew this was the beginning of something new, a new chapter. For the first time in a long time, he felt that perhaps it was possible to start over. Time passed, and the lives of Alex and Olivia went their separate ways, diverging paths on lonely roads. Alex dived headfirst into work, eager to reinvent himself. There was something liberating about no longer shouldering the weight of a broken marriage and constant betrayal. He began spending more time with friends, traveling, and slowly rediscovering pleasures he hadn't felt in years. But there was still something he carried, even if he tried to leave it behind. A shadow of distrust. Every new relationship he tried to forge was interrupted by the fear that everything could happen again, that someone could betray him once more. Yet Alex had also transformed into something stronger. The pain had shaped him, stripped away the naivety he once had, but it had made him more determined. He started attending support groups, connecting with people who had gone through similar experiences, and this helped him to overcome, to see that there was more to life than that betrayal. He learned to trust slowly and found in himself an ability to move forward that he didn't realize he had. He began to relate again, albeit cautiously, taking small steps towards a new chapter. One afternoon, months after the divorce, he returned to the house he had once shared with Olivia. It was now for sale, and he knew that going in there for the last time would be necessary to close that chapter of his life once and for all. Each room seemed different, empty as if time had erased all the memories that were once recorded there. Yet, as he passed the kitchen where so many happy mornings had been shared, he felt a pang of sadness. But this time, a light sadness, not the crushing weight that had accompanied him in the past. He allowed himself to cry one last time as a symbolic farewell to the man he had been then. He locked the door and left, sure he was ready to start again. Meanwhile, Olivia faced her own battles after losing everything. Her house, her marriage, her lover. She found herself aimless, without ground. Friends who previously applauded her for her joy and spontaneity began to look at her with disdain, many judging her actions, others moving away. She began to realize that her mistake had not just been betraying Alex, but betraying herself. For months, Olivia tried to pick up the pieces of her life. She found a small apartment to live in, and her routine became an incessant search to reconnect with the person she once was. She sought therapy, trying to understand the reasons that led her to make decisions that ruined her own life. One day during a therapy session, Olivia admitted to herself something she had never said out loud. She was not happy, never had been really. Betrayal was just a desperate escape from a life she didn't know how to fix. The therapist then asked her what she wanted to do to change, and that simple question became a spark for Olivia. For the first time, she realized she needed to stop looking back and start building something new without the luxury she once had. Olivia once again dedicated herself to her career as an architect, but this time with a different purpose. She began volunteering in community projects, helping families find creative solutions for affordable housing. She found some solace in knowing that at least she was now trying to do something meaningful. But she knew that the weight of what she had done would never completely disappear, and accepted it as part of who she became. One day, while walking through the city center, Olivia and Alex crossed paths by chance. It was a brief moment, an exchange of looks that carried all the unspoken words, all the suffering, the guilt, and the memories. They looked at each other for a few seconds, as if trying to recognize the person they once loved in the stranger in front of them. Alex gave a slight nod, a gesture that mixed understanding and farewell. Olivia, in turn, smiled, a sad but genuine smile, as if she finally understood that that chapter was, in fact, closed. They went their separate ways without saying a word, and that's how their lives continued, parallel but never crossing paths again. Alex found a new love, someone he met unexpectedly on a trip. And although it took him a while to trust, he allowed himself to feel again. Little by little, he realized that he was ready to start over, with all the scars but also with a renewed desire to live and be happy. He sold his old house and bought a modern loft, free from the baggage of the past, where he started to build new memories. Olivia, on the other hand, focused on her own growth. Little by little, she forgave herself for what she did, understanding that it was a mistake she could never fix, but that it didn't need to define who she would be forever. She found a new passion in helping others, and it brought her a peace she had never felt before. The past cannot be erased, and mistakes left deep marks on both of them, but life went on, and each of them, in one way or another, found their own path. A path full of imperfections, scars, and regrets, but also of hope and new beginnings. And this is how the story of betrayal, loss, and above all, overcoming ends, because in the end, no matter how much the past hurts us, there is always a chance to start over. If you've made it this far, leave what you thought of the story in the comments, share your opinion, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more stories like this. Remembering that around here, we do not support any type of betrayal. We believe that respect and loyalty are the basis of any relationship. Until next time.